here thinking on things, and a question keeps coming up in my mind. It might sound a little bit odd, but I'm asking myself this. Does Blossom Hinesight have 9 lives? Well, keep listening, because I'm thinking about 2 major events that took place in my life when I was a young child, and for some reason they are coming up now in terms of a way of answering this question. So the first event, right, was when I was about 2 or 3 years old, just starting to walk and talk, right? And what I remember is that it must have been a weekend, because the entire family was home. My mum was home, my dad was home, and my sisters, whoever was living in the house at that point in time. We were between the kitchen and the garden because it was a nice day, and I remember that the back door was open. There was laundry being done. Back in those days, we had a washing machine in the kitchen, and we would dry our clothes outside on the clothesline. And what I remember with my little self was that when I walked in there, there was no one in the kitchen at that point, right? All the family, I could hear them in the garden. As I walked in, the washing machine was on my right hand side. I walked in, looked up at it, and I saw a little pretty teacup, right, on the washing machine. I was a little toddler then, so that immediately fascinated me. So I don't know how I did this, but I climbed up on the washing machine, and I was, looking at the teacup, and I remember that it had some liquid in there. So I drank it. Whatever it was that was in that teacup, I drank it. And I don't know what it was. I can't remember how it tasted. I can't remember how it felt when I drank it. But all I remember at that point is that all hell broke loose after that. My mother came back into the kitchen, and she saw me on the washing machine, ran up to me, saw that the liquid was gone, and started screaming. Then my dad rushed into the kitchen, right? He grabbed me, and next thing I know is that he's running down the street with me. So what had taken place, apparently, according to what I found out as I grew older, is that I had drank bleach that was in the cup. So my dad now was running down the street with me, because we lived next to, well, not next to, but there was a hospital that was about 2 streets across from where we lived, right? So he was running down the street with me as like a first reaction to take me to the hospital. I remember the point when my dad grabbed me. I do remember being at the hospital and being handed off to lots of different people, right? I remember being scared, right? And doing a lot of crying and being very confused as to what was taking place. I did get either my stomach got pumped, or that they induced, vomiting, right? So that all this liquid, or, basically this poison, can come out of my system. I don't remember that, thank goodness. But I do remember that I was eventually put into like a children's ward, and because I was so young at that time, I remember being in like a little cot, and standing up on the cot and looking around and seeing all the other little children either sleeping or crying or just looking at me, and my mum and dad came onto the ward, and they said to me whatever they said. I don't recall what it was. And then I remember them leaving. In my head, I'm shouting and screaming, "Why are you going? don't leave me, don't leave me here, where are you going? You know, but as a 2 to 3 year old, that couldn't be expressed except for just screaming and crying. Eventually though, I was released from the hospital, so I stayed there overnight for them to, you know, do their observation, and went back home, and everything was fine as far as I know. No major side effects from that. Yeah. So that was my first incident, and one of the reasons why I'm asking myself, does Blossom Hindsight have 9 lives? Second incident, right, took place when I was about, I think I was about 7, I'm thinking that, right? We also had a park down the road from where we lived, right, which we frequented quite often, right? I mean, myself and my sisters, we were the ultimate tomboys at that age. In the park, we had what is known as a maypole. If you're not familiar with the maypole, it's like it's a metal pole, very tall metal pole, probably about, I want to say probably about 10 feet, if that. But this is me remembering this as a child. So let's say it's a 10-foot pole, right? That is, you know, that is stands erect in the park, and it attached to it were ropes. Children would assemble around the maypole, and each child would take a rope and slip their hand into it, right? So it was a very thick, you know, coarse rope, right? And then you'd grip the rope, and that would be your way of anchoring yourself for the maypole. The key thing is that you're on the maypole, and your goal is that you want to get up as high as you can, because you want to just get up and just be flying almost in the air. One day we're on the maypole, and I'm not sure if I was being overly ambitious, but I must have crossed my rope with quite a few people, right? And then the maypole line started to move, right? And as the other players were going up, then my rope was going higher, and it was getting higher, and the speed was getting faster, right? And all you really have to secure you is just your hand, right, holding this thick, coarse rope. Back in those days, there was no kind of safety padding like you have now, right? So the flooring in the parks back in the 60s and 70s, that was just concrete, right? But you weren't paying attention to that. You just wanted to be on the maypole and to have a good time. Here I am on the maypole, the speed's increasing, I'm going up higher, I'm holding on, I'm enjoying myself and having a good time, right? And then all of a sudden now, I can feel that my hands are starting to sweat, which is not a good sign. The rope was coarse, right? But that's what it was. It was a rope. There was nothing buckling you in, there was no harness. It was just you and that rope. So I'm near the maypole, right? I'm having a good time, and then I realise that my hand is starting to sweat and it's starting to slip. There's not much that you can do when that's taking place. So I'm feeling my hand slowly slipping from out the rope. I'm trying to grip it, starting to slip more and more. And I'm up in the air now, right? So all of a sudden I just feel myself being disconnected, right, from this rope. I know, it's just a strange sensation. You're up in the air, there's nothing to protect you, right? And I'm feeling myself falling, I'm falling, and bang, just land on the concrete. I fell on my left side, right? All my face scraped up here, right? This entire area scraped, my clothes were all scraped up, my face was scraped up. I was bawling because one, it was just the adrenaline of being on that on that maypole at that speed and height, and then to have just fallen down right on the ground, and then the pain that came because I fell on concrete, right, and just a shock, I think, of having fallen. So I remember being on the floor. My sisters came around me, and you know, one of them took me off the playground. All I remember is that I was boarding and she was taking me home. So these are the two incidents that I'm thinking about that, you know, they could have been a very drastic outcome had things been very different. So that's why I am asking that question. Does Blossom Hinesight have 9 lives? So in hindsight, some of you may be listening to this and saying, but what happened to me when I was 3 or what happened to me when I was 7? What do those incidents have to do with the question being asked? Does Blossom Hinesight have 9 lives? So let me answer my own question. No, Blossom Hinesight does not have 9 lives. Like all of you, I have my one precious life. And that's my point. Because all of us have our one life. What I'm really getting at here is focusing on the quality of life. When I talk about when I was 3 years old and nearly poisoned myself by drinking bleach, well, that was a basic accident that took place only because there was no real focus for parents at that time to have to focus on safety in the home. It wasn't a common thing. It was not common for products to be child-proofed. But over the years, because we have focused on quality of life, then these are some of the things that have improved. The same way that when I fell off the maypole, scratched up my face, right? That wouldn't happen now. Things have changed. Quality of life issues once again. Now, most parks are designed to be kid-friendly. As simple as it sounds, that in and of itself is a quality of life matter. And that's why I'm posing that question and answering that question for myself, that no, I don't have 9 lives. None of us have 9 lives. And that's why there needs to be a greater focus on improving the quality of life for all people. To emphasize the point that my life is precious, in turn, your life is precious. That's it. And I just wanted to share that in this context, especially now when issues impacting upon the quality of life are becoming more and more apparent. I thank you for sharing your time with me. I hope that my hindsight has and will inspire you, and that you will find your own way to blossom.